things are made from one, and in the end, all things return to one.
In other words, one is all.
Indeed, and all is one as well.
All is ultimately of the one. So if all is not included in the one, then all is nothing.
You have passed.
So, just a stronger connection, connecting the dots with the whole masculine and feminine, you could say, war, you know, the war between heaven and earth, and just adding a different perspective to it in connection with the experience and never putting this experience together. Like, I realized, like, after I ground, like, if I sit in nature for a long time, but especially with my feet on the ground, I'm grounding. Again, we terraforming with all of our different practices. You could never really prevent yourself from terraforming. Even a yogi is terraforming by not eating and, you know what I'm saying, basically being a vessel more for air and fire spirits, because it's breathing, you know, the spiral, the spirit, the breath, you know what I'm saying, that's fire and air, plus you're breathing, so it's fire and air quite literally, you know, and fire and air don't like heaviness, you know, in that sense of it. Hence why they become, you know, people who eat less and stuff like that. And in that same notion, that's why computers or quote unquote robots or anything that build off electricity and can compute things like a mind does, meaning like the mental space or the mind, like a computer, you know, analyzes and compute things, you know, a computer and a robot, of course, and then a computer has access to the internet, and the internet is almost like a subconscious mind, you know, and it's allowed to move at rapid speed. I could research this and research that and look at this subject, look at that subject, you know, that's like that Gemini, Mercury, quick moving mental aspect, you know. So you terraform either way you go. So as I sat on the ground, I noticed, like, whenever I'm grounding or finish grounding and sitting down, especially sitting down with my feet touching the ground actually, so not, you know, with my shoes off, and in most cases with, you know, sitting down on the ground, so my spine or my root is able to be touching the ground. I noticed that after I'm done, I really don't want to deal with the computer or the phone. It even took a little bit for me to, you know, if it wasn't for this being like so much of a, like, all right, just adding to the library and connecting the dots, I wouldn't even done this video, you know, because I was even feeling like, why, you know, I don't want to stare at this phone. Like, I don't even feel like having my headphones on or even looking at a phone screen right now, you know. But that's the key. I noticed that I don't want to deal with electronics after I finish grounding, after I finish dealing with that earth element, you know, that, you know, mother element. After I finish dealing with that element, I don't be feeling like dealing with the the father element of, you know, air and fire, or, you know, dealing with the phone, because again, the fire is the electricity, you know, for the phones, you know, and the fire is also just the visual, it's the lights, you know what I'm saying, like the lights that's showing up on the screen, you know, just like the lights in our imagination when we visualizing something, when we dreaming, you know, we seeing it in color, you know, in essence, like, you know, it's light, it's fire, you know. So seeing, even within the simple aspect of grounding, you know, how the, you know, earth element tapping in with the earth element strong, and aka in essence terraforming your body to connect with the earth element very strongly, it disconnects you from connecting with the fire and air element. And as we all know, again, we balancing ourselves out, so of course we still may use our phone, electronics, and again, it's the full, there's no way that you're not going to deal with all elements. I mean, all elements are present in your body, in that essence. You're warm, you know what I'm saying? That's like fire, you know what I'm saying? You got electricity going through certain parts of your body, that's fire. You're breathing, in essence, to, you know what I'm saying? Well, I ain't gonna say you have to. I feel like there's levels of, not having to do certain things in this realm, but you gotta go talk to somebody probably in the mountains in Tibet somewhere or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Go on a little golden child journey or something. But just for the sake of like, all right, the average, person, even on their spiritual growth, still breathes, you know what I'm saying? So you tapping in with the air element. Your body is earth, so it's inevitable for that aspect. And your body is like whatever percentage, a high percentage of water, not to just give out any percentage, but it's a high percent of water. So you're dealing with all these elements regardless, So you see, again, how the heaven aspect deals with fire and air. Seraphim, angels from heaven, they was what seemed to be like fire or light or flames. You feel me? Again, even the word spirit, Y and I is interchangeable. So SPYRIT, spirit, pyrite, and the connection again with Jinn, and Jinn being of like air and fire and connected to the celestial spheres or the heavens or stars, which is considered to be, balls of light, And on another level, I was picking up after rewatching the video on the Time Bandits, the little movie Time Bandits and the little dwarf gnomes, and thinking about the Twa people, but like basically dwarfs though, in particular, and I thought of like, which is in Norse mythology, it's kind of depicted, oh, well, dang, it's kind of like both. I realized the Hephaestus and Athena story where Hephaestus tried to like basically, rape Athena. And then in Norse mythology, you got a situation where Freya, she not necessarily raped by these dwarfs, but they have like her necklace or one of her jewelry pieces, and that kind of shows that connection to Oshun too. But because it's the Friday, Venus, Freya. But anyway, they have one of her pieces. In order for her to get it back, she got to have sex with all the dwarves, you know what I'm saying? And then you got, so other than that aspect, also seeing like, all right, Athena is like a warrior woman, and in essence, in Greek mythology, she would be seen as like the, I thought of Xena, the warrior princess, but would have tied even more. So what everybody mostly popularized with is Wonder Woman, and basically like the Amazons, like the Amazon women, and the stories of how Amazon women, didn't deal with men and stuff like that, And one of the things was that Hephaestus was, in essence, working with, the Amazons. He did work for different, it was funny. It's like you could think of her face as almost like in a personification in mythologies. You know, her face is Anne Vulcan is almost like the movie God of War with Nicolas Cage. But basically, like, you know, her face is in Vulcan is like an arms dealer. You know, and it's also Tavashtar in Hindu mythology as well. You know, because he made something for Indra. You know, and again, just like her face has made something for Zeus as well. You know, same little correlations. But in particular, I'm talking about like how her face has made, you know, stuff exclusively for the Amazon women, and he had like a little relationship with them. You know, like if they had like certain men children that they didn't want or something like that, like they would, you know, kind of send them to Hephaestus and let them, you know, work in the forge with Hephaestus, you know. And Hephaestus again is connected to the dwarf energy, you know, Lord of the Rings, you know, they forging stuff, you know, the dwarfs. In most stories, I think of the time, what it is, the time I reincarnated as slime. You know, I might not mention it in a minute, but that anime, you know, Rimuru, you know, when he was building his community, building basically like his little kingdom, so to speak, you know, he first thing when he wanted to like, you know, get a metalsmith or get somebody to like, you know, make weapons and stuff like that, like he had to go visit the dwarves, you know. So there's a constant correlation with the dwarves and, you know, creating weapons on that level. Now, the dwarfs are strongly connected with, you know, the earth plane, and I made videos a while back of how the dwarfs are like the gnomes, dwarves, and stuff like that. You know, they realm, like in movies and shows, it's always depicted as all you had to do was just kind of sleep by a tree or dip into like a little hole, a hollow hole by a tree or something like that, and then all of a sudden you in their world, you know, like compared to like with, you know, going into another world, you gotta like get in a spaceship or meditate and go beyond the stars, you know what I'm saying, like doing like that to get out of, you know, to get into a different dimension. It's something as simple as like, you know, finding a little nook or cranny in nature, you know, because, you know, in essence the vibration of their realm is that close to, you know, to the earthly plane and that sense of it. And that ties in, that also kind of shows, you know, little connections with the underworld or the, you know, the other world, so to speak. And, you know, the book Dragon Legacy that I've mentioned before, you know. But you see how the gnomes slash dwarves, you know, why they're depicted with a strong connection to Amazon women in particular, because, you know, that's kind of like the ancient aspect of the women. Like the further you go back, the more you had like a stronger matriarchy, you know. And again, it going from one extreme to another, you know, like a society of women that didn't really, you know, like men was just to supply sperm. And then after so long, the men kind of was like, all right, fuck that, you know, we take control, and then women become like chattel, you know what I'm saying, almost like currency, you know. But because of the dwarfs being, again, like close to the earthly plane, the earth element, again, mythology is anatomy by law. The anatomy of the earth, or the anatomy, you know, of the plane, of the environment, you know, is also connected to the story. You know, no coincidence that dwarves is considered to, again, be, you know, in a realm that's closely connected to the earth plane, and the earth plane is what? The feminine energy. And in mythological stories, they were, you know, known for working more closely, you know, to service the divine feminine, so to speak, you know. And that's a little bit in Lord of the Rings to some extent, you know, where especially the movies with, I think, the Hobbit movies, where the story in particular looks at them dwarves who, were traveling or whatever, but basically they were working with what's her name, that elf, the elf lady. She was the main character on the latest Lord of the Rings series, not movies, but the series they did, which was like a prequel vibe. But she's like that feminine goddess of the elves or whatever, you know what I'm saying, and them connecting with her, you know what I'm saying, to get information, and basically in so many ways, working with her. So, and that kind of also may tie into the whole Tuat Danan and the river energy, the Nan, the river goddess, that's Apsu. Apsu, if I'm not mistaken, the river goddess in Hindu mythology, in the story with Vitra and Indra and all that. But anyway, so you see, again, connecting with nature strongly, connecting with earth strongly. You may find yourself not wanting to deal with your cell phone, as much, or technology as much, because you're connecting more with that feminine energy, that moves very different from, that masculine energy of fire and air. Fire and air is quick movement. The air could blow this way, blow that way, it's quick moving, it has no solid body, it's disembodied, so to speak, you know what I'm saying? And fire, same thing, a flame go to starting, man, that's why it's considered wildfires when they happen, in nature, but, just pointing out that little connection, to connect the dots more with all the other stuff, and just bring more and more clarity to also how it's just a thing of balance. Of course, to not be all, like, oh, everything is peaceful and this and that. Like, of course, yes, they had, like, just like with any type of war, you know what I'm saying? Like, and people trying to, shake back from that. They may still, like, some people may still be holding on to grudges strong. Some people not. Some people like, hey, man, let's just call a truce. Some people don't want to call a truce. You know what I'm saying? It's still going to be those little, you could say social, and it's a science in essence too. So as much as it's a social dynamic, it's also just the science of the elements, you know what I'm saying? Like, quite literally, hence why it's always said to look at nature, because nature shows just that raw elemental dynamic without the the mind of God, so to speak, in the sense of, like, with animals in nature, not, like they have like a natural connection. Like, there's no politics from the perspective of, like, I'm a tree, so I politically think a tree gonna be a tree, a lion gonna be a lion, a mole gonna be a mole, a bird gonna be a bird, and they don't have like a type of mind like a human to say, oh, well, I think we should call ourselves, the divine supreme of all beings, and we should take shits on the top of other people's heads, and it's like nature doesn't have that, what I'm saying? That just points even again, and just showing again, like how I've been talking about the whole difference between just the animal types of bodies and natural types of bodies, and what's natural to earth, and then the humanoid form, which in essence is not natural to earth from the perspective of, with the hands and the mind of God, or the imagination of God, created in the image of God, and God not being God of all things, but just an air and fire spirit that happens to be the most quote unquote dominant, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? It's like with the hands and the humanoid body and that ability to, imagine things on that level, then again, you get everything you see outside of nature is, everything you see that's alien to nature is here because of these hands, connected to the archons as well, the planets, each finger having a planet connected to these hands, and this mind and this humanoid, you know what I'm saying? Like the whole reason why I'm holding this phone, as I'm just bringing full circle again, like connecting with the earth and not wanting to really connect with the phone, you know what I'm saying? Like again, after you connect with something terrestrial, you're not really wanting to deal with something extraterrestrial. And that also points to why, and it's the difference though, again, like monks in Tibet or like even in Ethiopia, anywhere where there's like a high altitudes, because if they're in high altitudes, that mean they even, more closer and higher up there with them air spirits that's not used to being close to earth. You feel me? And hence why a bird may represent like heaven and stuff like that. It just represents being connected to the air and more susceptible to, again, a bird is more, it's a vessel that could be, more terraformed for an air spirit, you know what I'm saying? But like going into those mountains and stuff like that, like, but the monks in essence points to a more, like they tapping into the quote unquote alien aspect, in the sense of like tapping in to that mind, an inner image astral body vibe, but they technically not using it to modify nature, you know what I'm saying? In that essence, like a monk is not necessarily, and not saying all, because no telling what anybody is up to in that sense, you know what I'm saying? Some monks could be using meditation to visualize a skyscraper, who knows, you know what I'm saying? But for the most part, you know what I'm saying, like they tapping in with their astral body and doing things on the astral plane, but again tapping in with that earth and fire element more strongly, but at the same time they not using their hands and using that energy to like create things outside of nature, while some people tap into it and use it to create things outside of nature. So you even see like, all right, and again, it ain't no all bad or all good if you tapping into the fire and air spirit, as the loud spirits, the whatever spirits like to be embodied in loud vehicles are showing up in the background, but anyway, the spirits of the air and fire, again, ain't all bad, ain't all good. Spirits of the earth and the water is not all good, not all bad, So just wanted to, add that little simple connection. It's not going to be no long video. Just connecting the dots, solidifying what we already done expressed and shared, and giving the example, most importantly in this video, giving the example of how, I've seen the mythological story within my experience, because now I see the symbolic connections between, all right, jinn and the mental body and quote unquote heaven or the celestial body, again, air spirits, fire spirits, and they came from the air and they were made out of fire, and all of these connections, and then seeing like the earth, quote unquote underworld, and this is where the gnomes and the dwarfs and mountains connected to the underworld, and you know what I'm saying, like seeing that symbology, but just in quote unquote mundane operation of just sitting down on the ground and grounding and seeing like, all right, after grounding, I didn't really want to tap in with my phone or use, this. I didn't want to tap in with R2D2, which is connected to the fire and air element, and hence even more it makes sense why, a lot of times too, well, it comes up in different ways, but like, that may be something to peep out too, like what people call angel numbers, but synchronistic numbers that show up, and like, paying attention of if they have a different meaning when you see the quote unquote numbers through your phone or through something electronic, compared to like when you see it like, on a building, or well, technically shit on a building, to some extent, addresses and stuff like that, it comes from the mind, from the mental plane too. So, that's kind of, because I was going to say, like, all right, if you see it on a license plate or a building, that's more connected with the earth perspective, compared to like seeing the quote unquote time on your phone or seeing something on the internet that shows the numbers, where it's kind of through, technology, and again, the technology itself is still made from earth in essence, but it's been, modified in that, and not just organically made straight from earth. It's not like your screen. Yeah, your screen is a liquid crystal display, but it's not just raw quartz untampered with. You feel me? But yeah, still, so even with license plates, addresses, that still all come from the mental perspective. So that's unique, and even again, like most sciences, that's why it was said that, all right, this quote unquote angel, taught Azazel and all the different little names of like the angels that came down to humans and taught them, again, like the knowledge of the gods. That even points to that as well, because again, it ain't no number that's attached to anything like in this realm that doesn't come from, the mind. And even again, the science of like, oh, well, number 2 means this and 3 means that. That's mental stuff, How you also could, what gives evidence to that? I won't even sit and be like, oh, this is how you know for sure, But what gives strong evidence to that? An animal not looking at whether it saw 222 or 333, you know what I'm saying? Like some animals can't even see, you know what I'm saying, to even be, at least with the physical 2 eyes, you know what I'm saying, to be worried about seeing some quote unquote angel numbers. And again, and even tying the whole thing with it being called angel numbers, because it's coming from a science that's coming from the heavens, coming from quote unquote, heavens, quote unquote, or the air element or the mental plane, you know what I'm saying? And through visualization, and hence the Hebrew letters is considered to be, the shadows of a flame, you know what I'm saying, or light, you know what I'm saying, fire again, it's like that, what people consider God for the most part, especially when they just considering it to be masculine. They just talking about, a fire, air, spirit, and in some cases, the shadow of, of air and fire, or the shadow of fire energy, and not fire or air itself, so that's a whole nother thing too. But just connecting the dots. Now as it vibrate, y'all know what it is. Peace.